to promote openness?
Well, I think there have been attempts, and those attempts are very commendable. But what people expect, or at least what Pakatan Rakyat expects, is a lot more than just promises and announcements. I give you a very good example. On 16 September last year, well, we were nearly paralyzed because we've lived on the platform to abolish ISA for so many years. And you have the Prime Minister come forward and say ISA will be abolished. It was a good news, you know, it was good news, well accepted. Only to be sort of tempered down 2 weeks later with another announcement that there will be 2 replacement acts that will still allow for detention without trial. It's just like, you know, you can judge by yourself whether it's much different ISA or 2 new laws. As long as it allows detention without trial, to us is ISA in a different clothing. So, but my point is, that's the point. Datuk Sri Najib seems to be taking hits from the people. You know, it's as if he understands and listens, but he doesn't have the decisiveness and leadership to do what is necessary and say, I know there are a lot of grumbling within UMNO. I know that there are conservative elements within Barisan Nasional who cannot imagine a freer and more open Malaysia. But for the sake of the country, for the sake of your generation who would inherit, I'm considered old by now, by today's generation, I think. You want openness. You want to have more discourses, and you want to make sure these restrictive laws, ISA, Printing Press Act, AUKU, all these have to be eliminated and repealed, not to be replaced. So while he has been trying good, I think people want to see a lot more on the delivery and not just the promises.
YB, your take on this?
Yeah, let me just reply to that. Rafizi said that we were paralyzed 16th of September last year by the announcement of the ISA. I think it was an earth-shattering announcement, actually, in terms of its scope, its reach, and its significance. And my answer to Sir Rafizi is very simple. If we do not repeal the ISA in March, when the parliamentary sitting opens, when Parliament opens for its first sitting, then we are walking into this election without fulfilling one of the most important promises that the Prime Minister has laid out. Now, Rafizi's point just now was that it's going to be replaced by something else, as if to say that, oh, you replace the ISA with something else, which is equally draconian, which is equally bad. I think we, in Barisan Nasional, understand that if we replace old wine with new wine, that's just the same, that's equally draconian, that's equally repressive, we are going to lose a huge chunk of the electorate, a huge chunk of the young votes that are going to vote at the next election. So what we're going to do, what we're trying to do, is we're trying to come up with a legislation that will enable us to fight targeted threats. And by this, I don't mean the ISA. The ISA is a catch-all. The ISA, I am against the ISA because I don't like the fact that the ISA can arrest anybody that is deemed to be subversive or prejudicial against national security. So what we want to do is we want to tighten it. The sort of discussions that we've been taking place amongst at least Barisan Nasional MPs and the Home Ministry, we've been trying to drill down on the fact that you have to define what is terrorism. You cannot have a situation where there are absolutely no terrorist laws. If there are absolutely no terrorist laws which allows for preventive detention, then we would be gambling the security of the country. But what we've asked for is, for instance, judicial review, access to lawyers. We want to make sure that not just the procedural aspect of arresting somebody under terrorist laws can be questioned, but the fundamental basis of bringing somebody in and detaining them can be questioned by an open court. What happens today in the ISA under section 63, if I'm not mistaken, is that you can bring a writ of habeas corpus on procedural matters, but on section 8, which is detention signed by the Minister of Home Affairs, you cannot review that decision in court. What we want is to make sure that that can happen. On AUKU, yes, we are going to get rid of certain sections within section 15 of AUKU to make sure that students can join political parties. I've spoken about this, and the Prime Minister has spoken about this to say that we cannot, in this day and age, where in London you can join Club UMNO, and please do join Club UMNO. But when you go back to Malaysia, if you're a student in one of the IPTAs, public universities in Malaysia, you cannot. You cannot become a member of a political party. We've said that. We've said you cannot have this anymore. We must embrace change. So, with all due respect to Rafizi, it's not just rhetoric. This is for real. If we don't do it, if we don't walk the walk, then we are going to pay for it at the next general elections. And so, one last point about open debate, because this is related to the topic of democracy. Rafizi said, please tell the Prime Minister to have an open debate with Datuk Seri Anwar. I'll bring back your message to Datuk Seri Anwar. So I had an open debate with Rafizi, dia pakai sweater keadilan. Then he asked, but I just want to tell you this. Every week in Parliament, we don't have PMQ, Prime Minister's question, like you have in Westminster. But what we have is Minister's question. And what we have is the Prime Minister summing up big legislation. And every time there's Prime Minister's question, we allow for Datuk Seri Anwar to have priority in terms of asking the question. We allow him priority to reply to the Prime Minister in the budget debate. We allow him priority to reply in the King's Address. And every week, every other week in Parliament, there is an open debate between the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition. But if you want a televised debate, if you want something more, I'm sure that's something that I can pass along. Thank you.
Great. Moving on to the next part of our debate. YB Khairy and Encik Rafizi will both have the chance to ask one another a question on any topic. Encik Rafizi, question.
Well, it's jolly good to hear everything that YB Khairy says. I wish you are the Home Minister. I wish you are. You are not. And that's where my next question is. My personal question is. I mean, you are very popular. Look at the crowd today. I mean, they adore you. You are an asset. You are a national asset to the young generation. Wow. Unfortunately, it is an open secret that you don't have a smooth ride in UMNO. I mean, the message that you bring, receive a lot of resistance within UMNO. In fact, because you are not appointed to the cabinet, you have very little clout at how much you can influence the policy. And that's why I pity you, because you have to go and, you have to come and face the crowd like this. When you go back and you bring the message back, I think people will listen, but you can hardly see much results after that. Now, it's not a question yet. And then, that's particularly nice. It's also an open secret that your relationship with Tun Mahathir is rather controversial, to say the least. So my question is, with all these obstacles, with all the potential, that contribution you can make to the society and to the younger generation, have you ever thought about perhaps it is better you find a better home in Pakatan Rakyat? And most of the time you sound like us. So, have you ever decided on that, especially after the next lecture?
Thank you very much, Rafizi. I mean, I sound like you, I look like you. I wouldn't be caught dead in that sweater. But seriously speaking, thank you very much, because I expected to come here, a slugfest with Rafizi and I, and what I get is actually an invitation to join his political party. I consider my KPI met. But having said that, no, serious point. Having said that, it's I always get this, you are Ketua Pemuda, but you're nothing, no post. What are you doing there? I believe in a reform mission within my party. I don't think it's wrong to have a reform and reformist view within UMNO and Barisan Nasional. I don't think everybody who thinks of themselves as a reformist needs to shift political parties, go into Pakatan Rakyat, of which there are many problems with the opposition. And I fundamentally believe in the rich history of UMNO, the history of Barisan Nasional. And it's not this history of Kenang Jasa, because of history, I feel grateful, I feel thankful, syukur and all that kind of stuff. No. But because I believe that beneath all the excesses and weaknesses that we see today, of which there are many, I still think that this is the best alternative for Malaysia. I still think that this is the best choice and option there is for Malaysia. And if Rafizi tells me, you have no impact on policy at all, you have no influence at all, look at the reforms that are being taken place today that I spoke of earlier. Abolishing the ISA, letting students free to choose their political party, making sure that Printing and Publications Act are amended, coming up with a minimum wage, fighting against subsidy reduction, albeit on the short term. All these things are policy positions that I have taken as Ketua Pemuda UMNO Malaysia, yang hormat, yang setia, yang tak ada apa benda langsung. That has become the mainstream view of my political party. So I don't want the position, I don't want an appointment in cabinet. If my voice ultimately has become the voice of reform in the Barisan Nasional government today, that is enough for me. And as far as my relationship with the Prime Minister or my relationship with a former Prime Minister is concerned, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because your work speaks for itself. I've told the Prime Minister that I don't expect anything. Now, not at the next election, let me do my job, let me continue to be a force for reform within the party, with the likes of Datuk Saifuddin Abdullah. If our views become the mainstream, can you imagine, one day, the Prime Minister of Malaysia from Barisan Nasional UMNO says, the ISA will be repealed. Saya dengan Saifuddin aja, yang kata, kita dulu dah cakap dah. Yang lain semua kata, oh dulu sokong ISA, tiba-tiba PM kata nak hapuskan ISA. Semua sokong ISA, semua sokong dihapuskan ISA. But at least we were consistent. And now the voice of reform has become the mainstream view. I think, Rafizi, I have a little bit more clout than the Coleman non-minister.
Wait, YB, your question to Encik Rafizi?
No, seriously, where'd you buy the sweater? My question to Rafizi is as follows. I'll be magnanimous this year. I have some admiration for some of your policy documents. But one question that I, not as an opponent, but as a Malaysian would like to ask, I'm sure on behalf of other Malaysians as well, is how solid is your union? How solid is the union of Pakatan Rakyat? I mean, when will you tell us, for instance, your shadow cabinet? I know this question comes up again and again, but it's an indication of readiness. If you say that you are ready to capture Putrajaya, we want to know who is the shadow cabinet, because we follow Westminster style. I know there are no resources given to a shadow cabinet, but that's something we can work with if you're serious. And take, for example, the state of Kedah today. Kedah is one of your Pakatan Rakyat state governments led by PAS. But look at its treatment of its students in College University of Islam Negeri, where the Menteri Besar himself, a Pakatan Rakyat leader, Menteri Besar, has said that he supports AUKU, Akta University and College University, which is in your common policy platform, to abolish, hapus, to mete out disciplinary action against students. So where is the consistency? And one thing that I admire for Pakatan Rakyat is declaration of assets. I think we should do that as well. In Selangor and Penang you do that, but not in Kedah, not in Kelantan, as though past guys are untouchable. Cannot touch, Guru cannot touch, Kedah cannot touch. Consistency. I mean, these things we can paper away right now, but when it comes to the crunch, we want to know how solid is your union in Pakatan Rakyat.
did not answer the sweater question. Anyhow, let's start from Kedah. I think YB asked about assets declaration in Kedah and Kelantan. I think it's coming, but you guys don't have to worry, because unlike Penang and Selangor, those two states are quite poor. So I don't think with the track record so far, I think there is less concern. But nevertheless, I think I agree with you. There must be consistency, and what Selangor has started in 2009 and then followed by the AP in 2011, I'm sure after this Dr. Zul will go back and make sure PAS will do a declaration in Kelantan. When we asked about how strong is the union, so to speak, the political union in Pakistan, right? It's the question that people have asked over and over again that I think we memorize the answer. But I don't want to give the political answer. I just want to speak from the heart. I think what most people forget, it is as if Pakatan Rakyat, the cooperation of the three parties, only took place after 2008. That's not right. We have been brothers and sisters in arms since 1998. Dr. Zul and myself, we've been bracing for FRU, punya air, kimia, whatever, in all the demonstrations since 1998. We have come down. A lot of us were locked up together, slapped together in lockdown since 1998. So do not underestimate that what we have now is a lot more than just political convenience, because the relationship, the personal friendship that people like myself and Dr. Zul has goes beyond the boundaries of the three political parties. That's number one. Number two, if people question about our union or political ideology, I think Barisan has a lot to answer, because unlike Barisan Nasional, Pakatan Rakyat actually have a signed and very clear declaration of the policies that we will adhere to. We actually have a constitution, what we launched in 2009 as Common Policy Platform. You can go and have access to it. It has full information and full policies of all the major areas and policies in the country. We can ask Barisan Nasional whether they have that. They don't. They don't. What they have is a 50 years of track record of haphazard and so many policies brought together under the banner of political development. That's what you have in Barisan Nasional. That's why when they are facing crisis after 2008, they could not give a coherent answer in the same way that Pakatan Rakyat can give, because we have a boundary. We have a constitution. We have a set of policies that we have agreed. In 2010, after the Common Policy Platform was agreed in 2009, in 2010 we launched Buku Jingga. What is Buku Jingga? It is a set of programs by which we will transform and implement the policies that we have agreed in the Common Policy Platform. People are very clear now, if you were to vote for Pakatan Rakyat in the next election, what difference on the ground in your daily life that you will get within the 100 days of us taking power. You can ask Barisan Nasional. All they have is just a set of government policies that were built on 50 years of track record, but not a policy document that really binds the three political parties. So I think on that score, I think as much as Khairy is a lot more optimistic and positive about his cloud within BN and UMNO, we are as optimistic and even more confident that Pakatan Rakyat that you see now will stay for the next 2-3 generations, at least until I reach 60. I'm quite confident of that, because my generation is the generation of reformasi who have subscribed to these ideals and believe that the country needs reform. It goes beyond the three political parties. So that's why lately when Khairy pointed out about the policy differences, for example in Ampu, unlike in Barisan Nasional where you only have people like Khairy and Saifuddin Abdullah, and credit to them, who will speak against the establishment, in Pakatan Rakyat you see a chorus of opposition to Tan Sri Azizan. You know, people from PAS. In fact, the lawyer who is representing the 5 students in the court is actually Hanifah Maidin, Central Committee member of PAS.
taking a very clear policy position against the Menteri Besar of PAS. Why we don't so-called intervene? We try to intervene, but there are processes, maybe. You cannot go to your Prime Minister and say, I don't like that and that person, can you please replace it from cabinet and put me in? You can't do that. Likewise, we can't do that as well. We can't go to the Tan Sri Azizan and say, okay, you are out, please do this. There are channels and processes, government processes, policy processes that we have to do. How do we do it? We have the monthly meeting of Presidential Council, Pakatan Rakyat Presidential Councils, where policies are set, where things like this are discussed. At my level, at Dr. Zul's level, we have the Secretariat meeting fortnightly. In fact, I can tell you, I think people like me, Dr. Zul, Tony Pua and the rest, we spend more time sitting down in Pakatan Secretariat meetings than our own party meetings. So these are then discussed again at the Secretariat meeting. And of course, it goes down all the way. So there are processes. That's why I think, as much as, BN can point out to some of the grumblings on the ground about the inconsistency on APU by the state government, I think that will be resolved very soon. And I take comfort the fact that we do allow that difference of opinion, and we do allow the processes to criticize the top leadership of the party. So, going back, finally, I think I just want to reply to my question to YB Khairy awal tadi. Jolly good that you want to stay in Barisan Nasional, but let's stop again after the next general election.
I didn't say that actually.
No. I mean, you still thinking? Okay, that's good. So we can discuss again after the next general election, hopefully.
Take 1 minute reply if you want before we open the session to the floor.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to prolong this, but just a very, very quick rebuttal. Two things. One, for Rafizi to say that they have the common policy framework and the Barisan Nasional hasn't got anything, only government documents, I think that's a bit misleading. Of course, Barisan Nasional is the government of the day. Those government policies are our policies. Whether it's the 2012 budget, whether it's the 10th Malaysia plan, whether it's the economic transformation program, whether it's the GDP, that's all Barisan Nasional, because it was decided, formulated, and it's being executed by Barisan Nasional government. So it's untrue to say that we don't have something akin to your buku jingga. Now, and the second point is, I appreciate the fact that they're trying to resolve this thing, Kedah state government, and that there are voices of dissent within Pakatan Rakyat, but it is instructive. This is not a question of processes to be observed and to be respected. It is instructive that a Menteri Besar of Pakatan Rakyat, a senior official within Pakatan Rakyat, has not internalized the buku jingga. To him, it's okay to use the AUKU. You would assume that if they have this common policy framework, this spirit of brotherhood, this fraternity born of reformasi, that within themselves, they would not even dare to use the AUKU. But then his initial instinct, Tan Sri Azizan, Datuk Sri Azizan, Menteri Besar Kedah, is use the AUKU, justify, defend it, even though that's against your common policy framework. Thank you.
Alright, so we've heard questions from the floor. Now it's time for our fellow students to ask their questions. If you would please state your name and university before asking your question, and also, do stick to asking one question and make your questions as brief as possible, because I'm sure there are many questions from the floor, and we can take as many.
Hello. Okay, to save time, can you please, for anyone who wishes question, can you please form the line here? Okay, thank you.
And what we'll be doing is we'll be taking 3 questions at a time. So.
Right. Hello everyone. My name is Yilin. I'm from King's and I'm reading law. Right, I have 2 questions actually. I hope that's okay because it's a really short one.
Imran. Make it really short.
Yeah, right. Okay, my first question is to both YB Khairy and also Rafizi Ramli. Moving towards 2020, do you think that the recently passed Public Assembly Bill is a hindrance to forming a democratic society? And another one is, with changes in public policy, every time we have a new Prime Minister, Whereas you could see when Pak La came into power, it was Islam Hadari, and now with Dato Sri Najib, it's One Malaysia. Do you think that Vision 2020 has not been given the same priority as it was during Tun Mahathir's government? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Afzan from the University of Westminster. I would like to share with you a quote from Tukar Rahman, and he says that the spirit of cooperation and concord is living proof of the desire that we share for a common destiny. And it's nice to see that both of you agree with each other and admire each other. My question is that... my question would be, his speech is on the basis of unity. Would you say that you would prioritize, since you said that Vision 2020 seems a bit unrealistic, would you prioritize unity and reform the Vision 2020 rather than work towards an unrealistic goal? Thanks.
Hello, my name is Yannick Anwar, and I'm from Northumbria University, Newcastle. My question for both of you is, I feel that so much has been said, excuse me, let me just compose myself for a minute. I feel that so much has been said in terms of Peninsular Malaysia. Me coming from Eastern Malaysia, Sabah, I just would like to ask what you have to say about issues from Sabah and Sarawak. In particular with regards to the phantom voters and in particular with regards to the illegal immigrant issue. Thank you.
Alright, Rafizi, anyone of you all like to go first?
Okay, I'll make it short. I think Yiling asked about the Assembly bill. Our position on this is well known. We are totally opposed to it because it is another jelmaan, jelmaan of one bill to another. We government speak about allowing or giving the space to the public to express. Unfortunately, the Public Assembly Bill actually, in our opinion, will curtail even more so. For example, first and foremost, street protest is not allowed. This is a big conundrum where you say that people can express themselves, but there is no street protest. And if you go in details of all the requirements, and I can say this because I was one of the 5 people involved negotiating with the police for the 9th January. When they start going through the Public Assembly Bill's requirements, I think the only place yang kita orang we can gather is actually atas Gunung Jerat. Because, for example, we cannot gather within 500 meters of public amenities. That includes fire hydrant, that includes library, fire hydrants ada di mana-mana tau. It's true, and malls and so on. So while I think the spirit, okay lah, you can give the credit for the spirit, but that's the problem with I think Dato' Sri Najib's initiative so far. It's full of promises, but when you start going through the details, it's actually a curtailment. So that's why we have maintained our opposition throughout, and I think in the next few parliamentary sessions, I'm sure Dr. Zul and friends will continue to oppose. And our promise is that should we win the next general election, we will definitely repeal Public Assembly Bill 2011. On the question of changes of policy, we've had many, too many to count. Of course, you have Vision 2020, kemudian every 5 years you have 5-year Malaysia plan. You have long-term plan, perspective, master plan for I couldn't ingat, I can't remember. There are too many of them. That's why I think the challenges of today's world and economy is very different. We graduated from the years of Merdeka, where there's a lot of planning and economic intervention that has to take place.
Back then, our economy was very much commodity-based. Back then, there's a lot of assistance that needs to be given. Back then, there wasn't too much globalization that we have to manage. Nowadays, it's very different. So that's why I think the focus in the future, when you guys go home and become the top ministers, the top CEOs, the top civil servants, there must be a shift of mindset. The days, and I would like to echo YB Khairy as well as Prime Minister, the days when government knows best, it's long time over, way back then. What we should make sure is that the society is given the right environment, the right tools, and the right assistance to make sure that they individually can compete. And that's why I think when you focus the shift from too much of policy and planning, Islamic Hadari, and sekarang GTP, ETP and so on, and focus on what government should deliver to the people. Good education, good infrastructure, good universities, good ports, good and open and free media, for example. When everyone concentrate on this and the whole focus of government towards strengthening all these enablers and tools that our country needs, and I think people start forgetting and moving away from too much preoccupation about policies. That's Yiling's questions. The second question, Arzan asked about whether we should prioritize unity and so-called reform Vision 2020. I agree on that. It's just that I have some problems if unity is viewed exclusively from the perspective of public policy. We grow up in a country where it's all about campaign. Sayangilah Malaysia, cintai bahasa Malaysia, and so on. You know, when you say prioritize policies, does that mean that we embark on another 10 years of that kind of campaigning? I don't think so. And while you want to make sure that the well-being of the people on the ground is more important, you can only deliver that by making sure the real integration, the real respect on the ground happens. It's not about what you want them to think, it's about what they feel on the ground. And this is where I think there's a lot of tweaking and revamp of policies that we have to consider. I, for one, and a lot of people perhaps in Pakatan Rakyat, a lot of people in UMNO and BN may not agree with me on this very sensitive issue. I never subscribe to this idea that you need one type of school to make sure that everyone can respect each other irrespective of their race. I never agree to that because it's not so much a question of whether people come to the same building. I grew up in exclusively Malay boys residential school. But the difference was back then, and that was not too long ago. I'm not that old. Back then, the faculty is quite balanced in terms of racial composition. More than half of the best teachers, of my idols, of my role model when I was growing up were Chinese and Indian teachers who spent every single day with us in the school teaching us. So while we grow up in an exclusively Malay environment, we understand the concerns, we understand the perspective of the non-Malays because we have that interaction with the teachers of different racial composition. I don't think it's by default or I don't think it's by planning that you see now in schools, you see a lot more polarization in terms of teaching faculty. Partly because it's quite difficult to get people of different races to go and become teachers. You see that most of the teaching faculty now, especially in sekolah kebangsaan, are mostly Malays, for example. I think that is a lot less, I think the focus should be on that. That is a lot more detrimental to national unity than arguing about we need to close vernacular school, we need to have only one type of school. Because if you make sure that these kids from a very young age have that interaction and most importantly, understanding of the concerns from each other, and I think you can forget about reprioritizing Vision 2020 to put unity first here and there. Those are all on the paper. What matters is what you guys go through in university in UK now. I don't think you really differentiate between a Chinese, an Indian, and a Malay. You know, people from Imperial will be so proud that they are from Imperial. Doesn't matter. Yeah, I remember that. Doesn't matter whether they are Chinese or Indian or Malay. And I think that's what needs to happen back home, starting from schools. And if YB Khairy one day becomes education minister, I really hope you look at in terms of racial composition of our teaching faculty, because that's more important than all the other sloganeering which I think government embarks now. And last kali, soalan saudara Nick about Sabah and Sarawak phantom voters, I don't need to elaborate a lot on that, because in our buku jingga, the 10 promises, within the first 100 days that we take power, we will set up a royal commission of inquiry to make sure that we clean the electoral rolls of all the phantom voters in Sabah, and I think we will extend it to the rest of the country. That's very clear. Because as it is now, the practice and the choices of which party will govern Sabah, and to a certain extent other states in Malaysia, will very much be skewed by the presence of phantom voters. If you go to, I don't know how many of you guys from Semenanjung have been in Sabah. There are a lot. They outnumber the local residents. And that's why, initially, I never understood why is there so much concern about phantom voters in Sabah. I advised the next time, UKEC, this term, buat projek Kalsum di Sabah. We do project Kalsum di Sabah. We go to the most interior places, and I think it would do the country great help once people like you understand what Sabahans talk about phantom voters. But very clear, Pakatan Rakyat will make sure that we will clean the electoral rolls of all the phantom voters. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. Thank you, Rafizi, for once again giving me another portfolio, education minister. First was home minister, now education minister. I think I'll be prime minister by the end of the day. Elan's first question about Public Assembly Act, a Public Assembly Bill, which will be an act upon royal assent. There are serious weaknesses to this piece of legislation. I voted for it in Parliament for two reasons. One, because of government whip. Secondly, because I think it's still an improvement on the existing Police Act, which we got rid of. But as Rafizi said, there are some comical characteristics of this Act that needs to be changed, and I hope will be changed in the future. Public procession, for instance, is not allowed. And I've argued in Supreme Council of UMNO. I said, look, most demonstrations have an element of public procession. If you're afraid of public procession, then train the police to deal with public procession. Don't use the argument, oh, there were riots in London which people couldn't take care of, that's why we can't have demonstrations and processions. I said this is a Cold War explanation for a very 21st century problem, aspiration. You cannot use that argument anymore. But I am heartened by the fact that the police, notwithstanding the Public Assembly, Peaceful Assembly Act or Bill, acted the way they did on the 9th of January. I know Rafizi spent a lot of time negotiating with the police, but that is the policing of the future, where they allowed it, they allowed them to move from one point to another point. There was no police manhandling, there was no police brutality, there was even facilitation of the demonstration. And I think when the police, which is a key stakeholder in terms of demonstration, public processions, once they are comfortable with crowd control, then I think we will be able to amend this act so that it's much, much free in the future. You have to remember, the police in Malaysia, just like any other country of that particular geographical location, are very used to a Cold War mentality. For them, riot control is not merely riot control. It is also about dealing with subversives in the crowd. That is the institutional thinking of the Royal Malaysian Police, which has been dealing with communist threat, etc., from the past. I'm not justifying the current act. I'm just telling you how they think, their institutional mentality. And I think it was an eye-opener on the 9th of January that they could handle a crowd in the way they did. The results came out. The supporters of Pakatan Rakyat were very happy, and the police facilitated them from moving from the court complex to the Wilayah Mosque. If that is the spirit of the Act, and I think that we have nothing to worry about, and I'm sure, personally speaking, I would support the amendment of the Act in Parliament in the future, and it's instructive also, ladies and gentlemen, hold your applause, that in terms of conviction, now this is an important point, you fight something right till the end. When this thing was tabled in Parliament, when it came to voting, all of us from Barisan Nasional, even me, didn't agree 100% with the Act, with the legislation, with the bill. I stayed to vote. Pakatan Rakyat, which were up in arms against this Act, supported the Bar Council marching on Parliament to oppose this draconian Act. They couldn't even be bothered to stay in Parliament. They walked out of Parliament. And at the end of the day, people want to see that conviction of you staying and voting against something you disagree with. Second point, different PMs, Vision 2020 not giving attention. I would disagree. I mean, of course, each PM comes in with their signature motive, their signature slogan. It's One Malaysia now. But the overarching aim has always been this vision, this mission that we want to become this country coming of age in 2020, proud, developed, open, liberal, tolerant, and I don't think that that's gone anywhere. So I think notwithstanding everything, if you look at all the official documents, it's still rooted to that fundamental goal, which is Vision 2020. The question we have to all ask ourselves is that once it's 2020, in 8 years, what do we do? I mean, it's the end of the story. No, it's not. We have to come up with something else. So I don't think that different PMs take away from the Vision 2020. And if you look at the 9 challenges, I'm not going to say it out loud right now, because I can't remember offhand, because it's been a while, but it is very, very open. It is very, I mean, I'm not saying that it's vague. It's open in the sense that it provides us with a strategic direction. It doesn't drill down on specifics. Yes, there was an income target in the speech, but not beyond that. Liberal, open, tolerant society, maturing democracy, caring society. These are overarching aims, motherhood, universal statements, which I think we still hold firm today. Afsan's question about unity and reform, I just want to answer that by taking departing from what Rafizi said just now about one school. I'll make my story very short. Rafizi is lucky. He went to all boys boarding school. I'm guessing it's Malay College, Walakansa. I mean, it's one of the premier schools, still one of the premier schools. I'm nothing less than my late father was MCKK student. But it's unusual to have that texture, that cosmopolitanism of teachers teaching in other schools as well. So my story has been this, is that we are growing up in silos. And I'm not faulting the national school system, different streams, but I'm just saying, think about it. Malay kid goes to Sekolah Kebangsaan Kampung, doesn't see a Chinese kid. Goes to MRSM, doesn't see a Chinese kid. Goes to Jordan to study Arabic or to study Sharia studies. Doesn't see a Chinese student, comes back, works government department, religious department. Doesn't see a Chinese kid. Chinese kid, same thing. Goes to Sekolah Jenis Kebangsaan, no Malay kid. One goes SJKC yang tak ada pelajar Melayu. Goes to Chinese independent school. Doesn't see a Malay kid. Goes to Taiwan for his tertiary education. Comes back, doesn't see a Malay kid. Joins a private sector company. Accountant, no Malay inside. I wasn't taking anything. But the point is this. This siloification, silos, parallel lines, they don't meet forever. Schools, yes, I agree, Rafizi, it's not the end-all and be-all solution to this problem, but we have to tackle this problem. What have we done in the past? Sekolah Wawasan, not really worked. PLKN, I'm a big critic of PLKN. I've sat on the governing board of the National Service Council. 3 months of your life, 18 years old. How the hell are you supposed to come up with national unity in 3 months? It's impossible. Impossible. There are other policy programs which I supported. For instance, RIMO, Rancangan Integrasi Murid untuk Kepaduan. From first standard 1 to standard 6, schools, Sekolah Kebangsaan, Sekolah Cina, Sekolah India, nearby, they do co-curricular activities together every single day. And yet last year, when I fought for it in Parliament, National Service got 560 million ringgit. And this remote program, which sees kids growing up every day, doing football, doing sports, doing drama every day, Chinese schools, Indian schools, national schools, got 2.5 billion ringgit. I said, there's something wrong. You have a much better program, and yet you can't get there. I said, we will only think about doing away with national type schools, vernacular schools, only if there's a referendum. Not a heavy hand of government, but only if the Malaysian people say, look, one way of breaking the silos is to have one school, everyone must agree. Only then we can have it. Otherwise, we seriously need to look at this problem because we are not growing up together. And after we grow up, what do? We join government departments, almost 100% Malay. Private sector company, Chinese owned, almost 100% Chinese. And then we go back, what do? Switch on Astro. Malay switch on Drama Melayu. Chinese switch on Walatoy. You are already silo-fine everything. Your life. Next question about Sabah and Sarawak. In terms of development, we have channeled a lot to Sabah and Sarawak in the 10th Malaysia Plan. The number of roads, the kilometre stretch of roads that we're building for Sabah and Sarawak is as much as Peninsular Malaysia. I, myself, as a member of Parliament for Peninsula, I say, if you want to give more money to Sarawak and Sabah, go ahead, because that's where the priority lies. And personally speaking, this is not me speaking from a party position, but personally speaking, I also want to make sure that there are no phantom voters. I agree that there should be an independent commission to look at this, because also, coming back to my point earlier, we do not want to win an election where they say, we only want it because of the phantom voters from Sabah and Sarawak. We want to make sure that it's a clean election. That is our commitment, and is my commitment to all of you from the younger generation. So we'll just leave it at that. Thank you very much.